Oh, Father, give me all the words that you gave me when I was preparing this, and give me all the thoughts that you gave me, and help me to express actually just a little bit of the joy I had when I was working on it. Forgive me, folks, if I look, but believe me, it's a lovely distinctive. If I can just remind you, the first prayer distinctive was leader of the dawn chorus on the front foot, leads the way in prayer. We're watchmen heralding the dawn. And the second prayer distinctive was sings before sunrise, prays in faith, declaring God's perspective before we see the answer. We are seeing the world and its problems from God's perspective, and that gives us a power. But this one actually feeds into a little bit of the fear I've had. It sings in flight continuously, praise at all times, living a life of prayer. It's that praise all times that kind of has always caught me out, and I've always laid it to the side going, yeah, when I'm older, I'll do that bit. So we're going to have a look at it. And God actually did say to me, before I started preparing this, I had a look at some notes from something I've been doing, reflecting on one of the passages in the Bible for some reason. Right at the end, there came the decision, actually, your way forward, Sheila, is to focus on these distinctives. So you're getting what I'm getting. Now, I'm going to say it again, sings in flight continually, prays at all times, living a life of prayer. This little bird flies, and when it flies, it sings with gusto, it sings with energy. And the song it sings is its own. It sings while it's doing all the things that birds do, looking for food, finding a mate, looking for stuff to make a nest with, going to try and find new pastures. So all of its life is tied up with flying, and therefore it's tied up with singing. So that song is fully part of what they do. And the interesting thing, and Steve and I notice it when we're walking, bird song is not a burden to them. When birds sing, you get the feeling it's a joy. It's just a part of their life. They do it. It's not a burden. It's not a duty. So we want to really reflect on, okay, how does that fit into what we think of prayer? And I have to say, most birds look pretty pleased with the sound they're making. But when we look at this bird singing all the time in all that it's doing, does that mean that God wants us to be on our knees praying all day? Now, that's a picture I had whenever I've seen that. After all, in 1 Thessalonians, and I will just read this bit, chapter 5, verse 17, Paul asks us to pray continually. And you find it a lot more in Romans and the other Thessalonian. So the picture I had, and the question I give to you is, are we supposed to be like Simeon? Are we supposed to be basically in church, on our knees, wherever our church is, praying all the time? For me, that's just a bit tricky. Bless Skylark. Pamela, I think it's Pamela Stack, who's one of the team, she did preparation on this, which I've taken a lot of thoughts from. And one of the things she did was look at what Paul was saying with the word continually. She looked at the Greek, and I'm going to give it a go. The Greek, avelatos, I think. She looked it up in Strong's Concordance. And what it said, and I will read this because it was so comforting. It talked about the meaning being an interval, no unnecessary gaps in space or time, this bit, as often as required, regularly, yet intermittent, like a persistent cough. I can do that. I can do that because when Steve has a cold and a cough during the night, it certainly seems continuous. I'm sure it isn't. So how do we move on with this? Well, if we believe that the definition of prayer is a conversation with God, how do we take then Paul's advice to pray regularly, yet intermittently, like a persistent cough? Well, One of my favorite verses in the Bible, and I even now I can't work out why, is Acts 17 verse 28, which is, we live and move in God. We have our whole lives, everything. We live and move and have our being in God. That's who we are. He is so, so close to us, always, always. Right. I want to use two pictures to try and open that out a bit. And you'll just have to bear with me, because the way I work with God and with myself really is through kind of stories and pictures. The first one is the story about a Native American tribe. Now, in this tribe, for a boy to move into adulthood, they had to go through an initiation ritual. And those rituals were really meant to be quite tough. They were to challenge the boy, to bring him to a point where he could start taking on the responsibilities and the rights of being an adult. In this tribe, what happened was the father would take the boy out into the wilds, somewhere he didn't know, he had no experience of at all, and he would sit the boy in the wild late in the evening, and he would say, I'm going now. You have to stay here, exactly here, all through the night. I will come back for you sometime tomorrow. And he left the boy. Now, this boy, although he knows the world around him, this is a completely new place. So as the sun starts going down, he starts hearing noises he's not used to, he's never heard. And his imagination starts running riot, and he sees large beasts and snakes and spiders and all sorts of things that can do him harm. But he knows if he leaves, he will not be able to become an adult in the tribe's view. And to make it even worse for him, actually his father will put on a blindfold. So there is no chance of him seeing anything. He's blind. He's in the dark anyway, and it's cold, and the hours drag. Okay. He manages not to get a wink of sleep, obviously, but he manages to go through the night. And just as the sun's starting to hit the land, he hears a noise right behind him. And this time he knows he's going to have to turn and face it, because there's no other way. Blindfold or not, he's got to turn towards that. So he turns and he whips off his blindfold, and he sees his father. His father has sat a little way off behind him, guarding him the whole night. At no point was he ever alone. I want you to just feel a little bit of how hard that was for the boy, because that's often how we are. How much of a difference to that boy would it have been, even if he couldn't see his father, if he knew his father was with him? It would make all the difference. I think if we think of how that boy would be different, the fact he would be able to talk to his father, just say, I'm really feeling scared, or it's so quiet, he would be able to rest. Even if he couldn't sleep, he would rest in the knowledge that his father was close. For me, that's a picture of praying constantly, consistently in the dark. It doesn't need words, but it does need us to know our Father's there. Even if we can't see him, he's there. Right, the next picture is more homely. And looking, I was interested to who be here tonight. I hope we can all relate to this one quite easily. The second picture is about living with my husband. And when we go out for a walk, and you all know we walk a lot, We very rarely talk. We just walk with each other, and sometimes I'll stop and point a flower out. I'm really good at that. Or clouds, I'm even better at that. Or Steve will stop us to listen to a bird, usually the robins, and then we stop and try and look together to find the robin. When we get home, I'll be doing work. Steve will be doing work too, but we're both in the same house. And I know he's there. And it's a strange thing. I can come back to the house if I've been out, and I can know as I go in the door whether Steve's there or not. There is a connection. But I also know when I'm in the house, if I'm in a different room, I can't see him. If I have a problem, all I have to do is shout and he'll come. Or if I have an idea, all I have to do is say, have you thought of this? What about this? And we can go into a discussion on it. It's because we're in relationship and we're together, and I feel certain and sure that he will listen to me if I'm worried, and he'll usually laugh at me as well. That's the relationship I'm in. And I would say I'm in constant, particularly in the pandemic, I'm in constant relationship and conversation with him. And we talk about all sorts of things, memories, ideas, and sorting out practicalities. I'm just checking that I've remembered everything. Oh, yes. And the big thing about this is it's not a burden. It's not a duty. Having Steve there and being able to say, oh, what about? Or can we go and do this? Is not a burden. It's one of the most beautiful, quiet joys God gives us. And we have it with him. We have it with him because he's always there, and he knows more than Steve, which is great. And he reminds me, very often he'll remind me of something. Do you remember you were worried like this and we talked about it? And do you remember what happened? It worked out okay, didn't it? And he helps build my faith by bringing memories of his goodness back to me. And I can still say, I am really scared about doing this talk. You know I am. And he can say, yeah, well, it worked out okay last time. It's a conversation. But having said that, there are times when Steve and I sit and talk very seriously about things. And it's the same with God. I need to sit with him every day in the quiet and just be with him. And sometimes I need to sit and pour out my soul about my fears and my worries for the pandemic and the people I'm with, and my practical concerns about this food bank and what's happening and can we manage it all, because there's so much, you're pouring out so much provision. Can we manage it? And the conversation flows with God. It's not like necessarily hearing a voice, which I don't. It's more thoughts, memories, words, songs. Recently I've struggled, and I had this song coming which is based on his yoke is easy, his burden is light, and it wouldn't go away. And I knew at that point I was supposed to listen to the words because God was giving them. So you can see from that, just as each Skylark has their own song, our consistent and continual prayer is made up of all our experiences with God and all our questions and requests and thoughts and all the ways he's blessed us. It is our own unique song, which is actually a duet with God. Do you want to take over?
Wow. Sheila shared some of that with me as she was preparing it, but that's incredible.